All right, 2.10 for your take five. Again, we're looking at big ideas. I keep wanting to stress the big ideas because they are a wonderful tool for helping you analyze the things we are studying, which will in turn help you write your essay. So big ideas with the Austrian Habsburgs and the Prussian Hohenzollerns. Write those down. And even if we don't do these at take fives, continue to do this. I think it will be helpful to you as you go into writing essays on the exams. So today, 2.10, we're going to talk about the Russians. Their family name is Romanov. So you can add this to your king sheet. There is not a specific country section for Russia, so please just add it on the back or down below Prussia. So at this time, Russia was really seen as the hillbillies. They were the hillbillies of all of Europe. They were barbarians. They were so far behind the rest of Western Europe, all the places we've been discussing. They were still in the Dark Ages. Part of this, well, there's three things about Russia that will help us understand Russia whenever we look at their history. The three things are: Russia is really, really, really huge, it is really cold, and it's full of a lot of Russians. And these three things play into partly why they are so backwards in Russia. So it is going to be the job, or he'll see it as the job, to modernize his country. This is Peter the Great of Russia. So Peter becomes king in the late 1600s, and he sees it as his job as Tsar of Russia to modernize Russia, to bring it much closer to the standards of Western Europe. This is because he is an enlightened absolutist, just like Frederick the Great in Prussia. Peter is not counting on his own intelligence to make Russia great. He's not counting on his own ideas. He wants to consult others. He wants to hear from the best thinkers in Europe. What should Russia do to catch up with Europe? So in addition to consulting different thinkers and leaders around Europe, he goes and visits them. So Peter wants to take sort of the great European tour, but he doesn't want to travel as the king because that would mean a lot of publicity and a big entourage. So he wears a disguise. The problem was that Peter was 6'8", so he very clearly stood above the rest of the crowd. And it was a pretty well-known thing that the Tsar of Russia was a very tall man, so people knew that this was Peter anyways. As he's traveling through Western Europe, Peter visits a lot of the countries we have already been discussing this unit and learns different things from each of those countries. For example, in the Netherlands, he learns about the joint stock company. He learns about international trade and getting an empire where you can go get different resources and sell them to other people. In the Netherlands, he also learns about using technology to improve agriculture. Russia's really only source of income was agriculture. The Netherlands has lots of other things, but they still are using agriculture. So Peter's considering how might he use technology like the dikes and reclamation systems and windmills to help Russia. In England, Peter visits Parliament. He sees a body of citizens representing the people, and that by this time in the late 1600s, England had a fairly stable government. So he's going to need to consider, do I want Russia to have a similar representative government? Also in England, and again back in the Netherlands and in Sweden, he saw the navies, the militaries that were modernized, had new, bigger boats, have new, improved weapons. Peter sees all of this and is going to try and figure out what should he do back in Russia to help improve Russia's standing in the world. And all of this is called the westernization process. Peter wants Russia, which is so huge and very backwards, stuck in the Middle Ages. He wants Russia to be more like Western Europe. So he's going to try a lot of these different things. But as we saw even with the Habsburgs, with Leopold trying to make Hungary like Austria, You can write something down on paper, you can get the nobles to back it up, but unless the citizens, unless the regular people are on the same page, things aren't going to be too effective. So one thing that Peter does to try and force the citizens of Russia to be more Western is he forces the men to cut off their beards. It was very traditional for Russian men to have long, bushy beards. It was a sign of maturity, of the respect they were due. But Peter didn't like this because it didn't look like Western European countries. In England, in the Netherlands, and France, men were clean-shaven or had very, very groomed facial hair. So Peter says, men of Russia, you have two options. You can shave your beard and you look the way I want you to look, or you pay me a tax. So either way, Peter is benefiting. Peter's real test, his first test of how his westernization project is going, is the Great Northern War against Sweden. If you remember the 30 Years' War, Sweden had a really great military, modern, large. Peter had built up Russia's military and was able to defeat Sweden. So he sees this as a major symbolic victory, not over just gaining territory and gaining control of the North Sea, but in proving that his westernization of Russia is working. Peter also decides, he had seen in France, he saw Versailles and how beautiful it was. He decides he wants something similar. So he has an entire city built from scratch. This used to be swampland. There was nothing here at St. Petersburg. He has it built brand new. This is going to cost a lot of money. So there's going to be a lot of taxes, not just beard taxes, but taxes on people, taxes on things, in order to make this happen. Similar to Versailles, Peter wants his government workers, his bureaucracy, his nobles to live at St. Petersburg. But there is something different about Peter's bureaucracy. It would have been very common for the people who worked in government to get jobs because they were from the right family, or they could bribe someone and give enough money to get a job. Peter didn't think that system was very effective. Peter wanted a government run by the most qualified people. So the qualifications to work in the government of Russia was called the Table of Ranks. You got a job based on your ability, based on your merit, because Peter's trying to make the best country possible. And lastly, Peter wants to change the Russian Orthodox Church. He felt it was too Russian. It was too Eastern. The leader of the Russian Orthodox Church is the Patriarch, similar to the Pope. And Peter didn't like that setup, so he abolishes the Patriarch. He fires him, and in its place, he establishes a Holy Synod. This is a council, a group of leaders, and he got this idea from the Presbyterian Church. Again, a Western European idea applied to Russia, made more Russian. So he's called Peter the Great because he does a lot of great things, and he starts the ball rolling, getting Russia into the modern era. And then the only other Russian I want you to know is Catherine the Great. She's not the next queen. She doesn't directly follow Peter the Great. He died in 1725. Catherine the Great does not start ruling until 1762. She was married to Peter's grandson. So Catherine is Prussian. She grew up in what is modern-day Germany. She marries the crown prince, but nobody likes him. He becomes czar, and the people don't like him. The people don't respect him. But they do like Catherine. She's modern. She came from Western Europe. The people really support her, even though they don't like her husband. So the nobles work with Catherine and create a plan to overthrow her husband. So this is a coup d'etat. Coup d'etat, literally translated, means a cut of the state. It's whenever there is some sort of violent overthrow or violent change in the government. The people support her taking over. Her husband is forced to give up his throne and is eventually killed. She becomes the empress of all Russia, and the people love her. But she's not a very good person. She's a pretty horrible person. But she does accomplish good things for Russia. So here she is, much later in her rule. She was on the throne for over 30 years. And during that time, this is called the golden age of the Russian Empire, because Russia is getting large. Now, it already, first thing we know is that Russia is really, really huge. But second thing is that it's really cold. Russia needs more territory in warmer places. So they're expanding southward, and they are gaining more warm water ports, different natural resources. So that's very important. And then also the growth of art and education. Catherine had a huge personal art collection, and she's going to encourage education for Russians. It's not mandatory, um, but she's going to encourage it because when citizens aren't educated, the country works better. Her personal art collection is what becomes the beginnings of the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, which has miles and miles and miles of galleries. So again, horrible, horrible person, but she does accomplish good things for Russia. That is it for 2.10.